Hey everyone, super excited. This is episode 7 of the True Life with Tom show, and I'm joined by a dear friend of mine, Doug Bench, who was formerly an attorney and a judge in Ohio. Now he is actually a medical cannabis advocate in Florida and also the brain training guy. So we're going to talk about one of my most interesting friends today. And Doug, we're really, really glad to have you. And let's kind of dive right in. I love the story of triumph. Can we start there with the story about Lyons, Colorado, and how you have bounced into CBD?
Well, it's kind of crazy. Good morning, Tom. You are a good friend. We've known each other a long, long time, and I'm real happy to be here with you. I appreciate what you're doing for everybody with this podcast. I was a judge in Ohio for about 6 years, and I got to tell you, during that time period, I put over 300 people in jail for marijuana offenses, which I don't use the word marijuana. I use the word cannabis, which is the scientific term. And during those years, I was the hanging judge. I was totally opposed to cannabis. Uh, I was misinformed, like the majority of the people in this country back in the 80s. Cannabis was addictive. It was a gateway drug. It was horrible. It could ruin your brain. All of these things we were told. In Ohio, we had mandatory sentences where you, as a judge, had no choice. Depending on the facts in the case, you had to follow the provisions of the law regarding penalty. So I ended up putting 300 plus people in jail. I can't define it as prison because I was a municipal court judge. Uh, the most we could do was a year, and that was in jail, not in prison. But I put a lot of people there. Uh, then, long after I retired from the law and was basking down here in the sun of Florida, uh, I was diagnosed with a terminal disease, a disease that has no cure, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. My doctor said, given the late stage that I was in, that this was back in 2015, by the way, going on 10 years ago next month. And he said, because you're late stage, probably at most you've got 30 months to live. And interesting, my wife was with me that day, and of course, some tears flowed. And we were leaving his office, and he pulled her back out of my hearing range and said, you need to get his affairs in order now. And she didn't tell me that for a while. But my wife, my guardian angel, Jan, this year will be our 25th anniversary. But she, with that information from the doctor, got pissed off, pardon my expression, but she got very, very angry that he told me 30 months and told her to get my affairs in order at that time. So what she did, now she was at the time very, very interested in essential oils. She had all these tiny little brown bottles, and I used to get so angry because all essential oils were very expensive. Frankincense and omega oil and all these oils that were supposed to be helpful. And I made fun of them, of course, how stupid I was. And she did research. I was diagnosed in April of 2015. She did research from then all the way through to September of 2015 when she, through her research, found out that cannabis oil might help those who have COPD, an alleged terminal disease. And so she knew I was a prohibitionist. She knew I was against cannabis. So she left our home here in Florida. At the time, we had a ranch in Colorado. And Colorado, of course, is a legal state, even recreational since 2014. And she told me she was going out to Colorado, stay at the ranch, and go to a seminar, a horse trading seminar. We had horses at the time. And she was kind of sort of telling the truth. She did go to that seminar, but her real goal was to get some cannabis oil and to bring it back. Now, it was legal in Colorado, so she could get it in Colorado, but it was not legal to transport it out of the state. And she bought 8 grams of cannabis oil, brought it back on the plane, which had she been caught, she would have been sentenced to federal prison for probably 20 years. That tells you how big her cojones are. But when she got home, she showed it to me and said, I want you to take this. I said, what the hell is it? And she said, it's what you think it is. I said, I'm not taking that. I'm not touching that. That's illegal. That's addictive. What the crap are you doing? And I told her, get it out of my house and you might as well go with it. That's how stupid I was. But my wife was brilliant. We argued for 7 days. On the 7th day, she came down I'll never forget it. She came down our spiral staircase from the 2nd floor with a suitcase. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm leaving you. What? I'm leaving you. You won't help yourself? I'm not going to help you either. I'm leaving you. Well, I might have been stupid, but I wasn't that stupid. I said, okay, how do I take it? But I won't take it during the day. I will not take it during the day. I will only take it sitting on the edge of the bed. So if I get high, I'll never touch it again. But if I get high, hopefully I'll be asleep. So she agreed. And that night of the 7th night, which was October the 5th of 2015, I took a tiny, tiny drop of cannabis oil, hybrid cannabis oil, a mixture between sativa and indica, the tiniest drop you can imagine. She put it on the end of my pinky. I put it under my tongue. It's called sublingual. I could not stand the taste, but I was laying there, and all of a sudden I looked up, and my wife was standing by the bed. I said, what am I doing, honey? Am I giggling? Am I being stupid? What am I doing? She said, honey, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and sorry, Tom, I'm going to get emotional here.
It's okay. Its story means a lot to me.
8 o'clock in the morning. You just slept 8.5 hours straight for the first time in over 2 years, which is true because every night I'd start coughing as I laid prone. The fluids in my lungs would move up into my bronchial tubes, and I'd cough and I'd cough and I'd cough. I would never make it through a whole night's sleep. But that night I did. So I said, okay, I'll take another drop tonight. So, and she knew, she had done the research. She knew how to dose it, because if she gave me too much and I got high, that would have been the end of it. Mm-hmm. That would have been the end of me. But she had me take the tiniest of drops. And after about 2 weeks, being honest with you, Tom, I told her, this is BS. I'm not going to take this anymore. It's not helping. And it tastes like crap. And she said, I'll pack the suitcase. Okay, I'll take it again. And she said, well, why don't you, instead of on the tip of your finger, why don't you put it on like an Altoid or something and put that under your tongue? I said, well, that's a pretty good idea, but I didn't have any Altoids. What I did have was some Tic Tacs. And till like 6 months ago, I always put it on a Tic Tac and put that under my tongue. About 6 months ago, I was staying at a Hilton Property Hotel, and they had these, because I was a Diamond member, you could get a bottle of water, and you could get some Swedish fish, or you could get some trail mix. So I said, well, give me some of that Swedish fish. They're like gummy bears. Mm-hmm. And so I put my drop on the Swedish fish, and I kind of like that. And that dissolved quicker than the Tic Tac. So that's the way I went. And then I just switched and went to gummy bears altogether. So I put my dose that I'm still taking, by the way. I still take it, not every night. I take it 3 or 4 nights a week. I've only been high once in the 9 years I've been taking it. And that was my own fault. I put my dose on my Tic Tac, and I could not find my reading glasses, so I put too large a dose.
Okay.
And I did get high that night, and it was interesting because it was my birthday, and my wife had made a reservation at a real fancy steakhouse, and at that at that steakhouse, I noticed I was high, but here comes our server. My wife ordered a ribeye. I ordered a ribeye with the bone in because we have dogs, and I wanted to bring the bone home to one of our big dogs. So here comes this attractive University of Florida student waitress with 2 steaks to our table, and she said, "Who had the bone in?" Now, if you're high, that's pretty funny. And I started to giggle. My wife kicked me under the table, and then I ruined it. I said, "Honey, at my age, I do every chance I get." Oh, did I get in trouble with my wife? And as you may know, for rookies with cannabis oil, paranoia can be one of the results. And I got paranoid and never said another word that night. It ruined my birthday. And that was the one and only time I got high. But I went back to that doctor a year later, Tom, that same doctor, and I said, "I want you to do, my pulmonologist, I said, I want you to do all the same tests you did on me last year." Well, okay. So they did all the same tests. He came back into his office and he had the most perplexing look on his face ever. And I said, "Doc, what is it?" He said, "I don't know. I need to know what you're doing, Doug, because I cannot find any symptoms of COPD. None." I said, "I know."
Amen.
I
Amen.
know.
And I've heard this
And
story at least 5 times. I love it. Keep going.
It's crazy. He walks over and shuts the door and he says, "Well, I've got to know what you're doing." And it still wasn't legal here in Florida. So I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm committing a felony every night and I'm getting better and I'm not going to stop." He said, "Well, I can't put that in your chart. You know that." And I said, "I know, but it's okay, Doc, because I'm getting better." So that started me on this journey. I'm doing 3 things in my life. I'm an advocate now for cannabis. I am an advocate for improving your brain and learning how your brain works so you can make it work better. And I've been for 28 years now teaching contractor continuing education to home builders here in Florida. When I practiced law in Ohio, one of the things I did was represent contractors, tons of contractors. So I had the knowledge. I just needed to learn the Florida law, and I've been doing that 28 years. So in those classes, which were usually 40 to 50 home builders, that was my only audience, Tom. So I told my wife, "You know what? I'm going to tell them my story about cannabis. I've got to." Most contractors here in Florida were in their 50s or 60s. And so they needed help with their brain, and they needed to know that if they got COPD or if they were discussing the possibility of taking chemotherapy, if they had cancer, they got to know that there's an alternative. There's a holistic method that might work for them. I got to tell them. And my wife said, "No, you can't. You can't, because if the state finds out, I'm licensed by the state of Florida to teach. If somebody complains to the state, honey, they're going to take your license away." I said, I'm going to take that risk, because if it saves one life, it's better. I've got to do it. My story's kind of unique. I was a judge. I put 300 plus people in jail for cannabis offenses, and now here I'm an advocate for it because it saved my life. I got to do it. So I started teaching the contractors about the medical benefits of cannabis oil, not smoking it because I had a lung disease, so I could never smoke the flower. I've always taken the concentrated oil. And so I started talking about it in class. And what happened was, sometimes in class, my wife would be getting emails from these guys saying, "Hey, I'm sitting in Doug's class right now and he's talking about cannabis oil. I need to know more about it and how to get it." And they would ask me that at the breaks. They would ask my wife that. So we said, "Hey, we're going to start doing seminars all over the state of Florida, educational seminars on the medical benefits of cannabis. We're going to advocate for it being passed here in Florida," which it was put on the ballot. We advocated for it. It was put on the ballot in November of 2016. It was passed by a huge margin, 70%, and went into effect January of 2017. And that's when my wife and I started doing seminars all over the state on about 20 different topics about the history of cannabis as a medicine, how it works as a medicine, the myths about cannabis, which, of course, as you well know, there are tons of myths, myths, which I have trouble saying. And that's where it went. And we had this ranch in Colorado, so we were doing all these seminars here in Florida. And we said, if you want to, you can come to our ranch for a 3-day weekend. We've got a doctor friend in Boulder, which was like 15 miles from our ranch in the mountains. And he is a really strong advocate and has written a couple books on cannabis as a medicine, and he will come to our ranch and talk to you about it, and we'll take you to a legal grow in Colorado. And we were doing that for probably 5 years. And then I had a heart attack, damn it, which cannabis does not stop.
Right.
Unfortunately. However, it does reduce the buildup of plaque. But I had a heart attack, so my doctor, my cardiologist says, Doug, you cannot mend fences anymore. We had 40 acres out there in the foothills of the Rockies, and we had horses, and our neighbor had horses there, and I would mend fences, and fence mending was very difficult for somebody that had a heart attack. So, boom, we stopped doing that and sold the ranch and sold our horse farm here in Florida. And now we're living in Daytona, but we're still teaching people about cannabis oil as a medicine. So if you got questions about that, I'm happy to talk about that. And then we can also, after a while, talk about brain training as well.
Oh,
Learn how to make
absolutely.
your brain work better.
Absolutely. So for those of you, and I still think you have this, is it rethinkgreen.org is your website? So
Yes.
For those of you who want more research, more information, see, one of the things that Doug and I have both done on our journeys is we've broken free from the sick care matrix where you go and get diagnosed and then you go and get a prescription. So there are a lot of holistic, natural ways, remedies that God has created in our beautiful planet for you to heal yourself. So if you go to rethinkgreen.org, I'm going to have some more information, not only about Doug and cannabis and his events, but also about brain apples and the brain training that we're getting ready to get into. So super excited. So I figured, hey, you know what? That story makes me emotional because I've known you. I met you back in 2014. So this is going on and behind the scenes. And I didn't know this was happening with you at the time. I did not know. So I'm in Florida. You're going through this with Jan. I moved back to Maryland in 2016. By that time, you're well and an advocate. Okay.
Yes.
So I heard that in 2015, 16, that you were doing well and that you're fine, because I started asking about you and I was like, oh, shoot, because I heard that you had they gave you an expiration date and your wife said, bullshit.
Yeah.
So what has been the most, I think for me, the most exciting part of this story is your wife held her ground, and in spite of your stubborn nature, she helped you.
She saved my life, literally, Tom. She saved my life. And can you keep a secret? She's not in the room, but she still reminds me of that. she still reminds me of that, which is okay with me.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't do something she wants me to do, she'll remind me, hey, you wouldn't be doing anything now.
Right.
If it weren't for my stubborn nature and my large testicles,
right,
and bringing back 8 grams of cannabis oil illegally on an airplane, you wouldn't be around right now. She reminds me, and you know what? I love it. It's quite okay
same here.
with me.
Sherry's had an incredible impact and support for me on my multiple sclerosis journey. I was diagnosed in 2004. And in 2012, I was introduced to my brain by The Secret and realizing that you can heal your body with your mind. And there's a gentleman by the name of Morris E. Goodman, and they call him the Miracle Man, and he almost died in a plane crash, and he literally healed his body with his mind. So where are you on the transferring all this knowledge to everyone else? How often are you doing seminars? Tell me how that's going.
Well, right now I am not doing any of those seminars, but we're going to restart them in April.
Okay.
And we're going to do probably, somewhere in there, this almost 80-year-old guy, that's me, has discovered technology and Zoom, for example.
Right.
During COVID, the state of Florida wouldn't let us do any hotel-based training for continuing education. So they said, you're going to have to do it online. Well, I didn't know how to do it online, so I learned about Zoom. And so we did some contractor seminars on Zoom. And so my wife says, hey, let's stop doing as much driving all over the state. Let's do these cannabis seminars on Zoom as well. So in April, our first cannabis seminar, and they can learn about it on Rethink Green because it can be anybody from all over the country can get on Zoom. And we're going to do, they're going to be about 4-hour Zoom seminars. We will do a few live ones as well here in Florida for anybody that lives here in Florida. But we will be doing them on Zoom. They'll be like on a Saturday from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. We're not going to go all day. We can get done in 4 hours all the things we want people to know basically about the medical benefits of cannabis and how to dose it and how it works in their brain. And she's not here right now, but my wife will be sitting right beside me because I must confess to you and your listeners, she's smarter than I am.
Right.
And she has a mind. She's still, Tom, she's still doing research on cannabis since 2015 for almost 10 years now. It'll be 10 years next month.
Well, that's a perfect segue. You have done a lot of research yourself, not only on cannabis, but on the brain. So tell me what took you down that path.
Oh, my goodness. I had no intention of going down that path whatsoever. I was very fortunate to be able to retire from the practice of law when I was very young. To me, young would be late 40s. I had a business here in Florida. I was practicing law in Ohio. We were very fortunate. We were doing very well in that regard after we came back from being a judge. And I owned a recording studio, a tourist attraction recording studio by Disney. Universal asked me to build one for them, which we did. And I was just having fun, helping people record a song to their favorite music, living life to the fullest. And then my mother, who was a member of Mensa, meaning she had a genius IQ, got Alzheimer's, and she died with complications due to Alzheimer's. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm not a genius. It certainly skipped me. But if Alzheimer's can take a Mensa genius like my mother, man, oh man, I don't have much of a chance. So it scared the crap out of me, to be honest with you. My brother at the time, my brother had been a metallurgical engineer, a research engineer, a brilliant person. He was retired and pre-diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so I was scared to death. So I said, I got to learn everything I can about the brain. I got to learn how the brain works so I can make mine work better so I won't get Alzheimer's and dementia. And I knew nothing about it. I couldn't even spell Alzheimer's back then. Didn't know the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, nothing. So I went looking for a book, and I found this book. Honestly, it was the largest, thickest book I could find. It had like 600 and some pages. It was a book called The Owner's Manual for the Brain by Dr. Pierce Howard. I said, this is it. This has got to be the book I need. So I bought that book, started reading it into the middle of the night. My wife and I had an easy chair, a leather chair in our bedroom, and I'd get out of bed and sit in that chair and read that book. And you know what was in that book, Tom, when I was reading it? He kept saying, wait 5 or 7 years from now when the new brain imaging equipment is being used by the scientists. They're going to discover things that was only science fiction. So I looked at the front of that book, Tom. He had written that book 5 years before I was reading it. So when he said, wait 5 or 7 years, I was already there. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So I got so darn excited. So I started looking for research studies that were based on this new imaging equipment that was called a SPECT, SPECT imaging scanner, single photon computer enhanced tomography. I have no clue what that means, but I did learn what it does. And what it does is allow the scientist to look into a slice of the human brain, a 1/100,000th the thickness of a human hair, of a living, breathing human being. Before that, sure, they could see brain tissue under an electron microscope, but that was brain tissue from a dead person. They're not doing much thinking on a slide under a microscope.
Right.
So the things they were finding out, being able to study a human brain, was astounding. So I just kept reading research study after research study, book after book. And then came the book that just blew me away. The name of that book, and it's sitting right over here on my desk, the name of that book is called The New Brain. The author is Dr. Richard Restak, Restak. And in this book, the first night I was reading it, I was sitting in my chair. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. My wife was sleeping away, and I read something in this book that just blew my mind. And I let out a yell. Honey, you can't believe this. This is astounding. And what it was he, with the new brain imaging equipment, said, and I'm paraphrasing now, but then I'll tell you the biggest discovery he put into that book, which is all true. But he said, what the scientists are learning now are things that just a few years ago was a stuff of science fiction. But with the new brain imaging equipment, now listen to this. He said, if you learn about how the human brain works, and if you learn about what the scientists are learning from this new imaging equipment, if you learn strategies and techniques based on the new findings and apply it, listen now, you can expect a lifetime of greater achievements. Are you kidding me? If I learn how the brain works based on the new brain research discoveries, I can expect a lifetime of greater achievements. That blew me away right out of my chair. I shook my wife and said, you got to listen to this. You've got to listen to this. This is a neuroscientist saying this. This is not some fruit, pardon the expression, Tony Robbins type guy.
Right.
This was a neuroscientist saying this. Learn how your brain works, and you can make it work better. That led me on this path for the last 20 years to help people learn how their brain works. And I had built up almost 750 pages of notes on the research studies. I had read over 100,000 pages of brain research and books, all on how the brain works. And what I discovered is my brain started working better. I wasn't even intentionally trying to make it work better. I was too busy reading all this new brain research to worry about my brain. But then my wife noticed it, that I was doing so much better. I was just in my early 60s at the time, but I was accomplishing more, helping more people. And my wife's going, honey, I don't know if you're intentionally doing this, but your brain's working better. I said, it is? She said, yeah. So that's when I got a guru, because I wanted to be able to speak to people. I got to become a better speaker guru.
Right.
And he said, when he saw all my notes from the brain research, he said, Doug, you've got to write a book and you got to help people. I said, I can't write a book. And my wife, my brilliant guardian angel sent from the Lord, and I really believe that. She says, yes, you can. and I will help you. So we sat down. It took many, many months, but we came up with this book. My oldest son came up with the name Revolutionize Your Brain, Kiss Your Old Brain Goodbye. And in that book, I put the 12 greatest brain research discoveries that the scientists had found from the new imaging equipment, and put it into this book. And then I put the 16 strategies, most important strategies based on what the scientists had discovered in our book, so that people could make their brain work better. And we called it Brain Apples, APPLES. Jack Canfield, a very good friend of mine who you may know from the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. He said, Doug, you should call it Brain Apples. Apples, an acronym. And I said, okay, an acronym for what? And tell you the truth, we were in a bathroom at the time talking about this at the urinal.
Sure.
So
that's where some of our best work is done as men.
That's right. And we went over to the sink, washing our hands, and we stood there for probably 30 minutes to come up with this acronym, Brain Apples. So you learn how your brain works. Your achievements, your productivity, your performance levels will be elevated significantly. APPLES, if you learn how your brain works.
Well, I use the Jack quote from time to time. If it ain't fun, don't do it.
Yeah, I love it. So that's what we put together, and that was a long time ago. And my health, we went through the COPD, then we went through, frankly, 2 heart attacks, through a big kink in everything, but we've recovered from that. In fact, I've got an appointment with my cardiologist this afternoon. And one of the things we're going to talk about is whether or not I need to do any more stress tests, because I've been dieting the way he wanted me to do, and doing my holistic methods, and we're doing pretty good. So I don't think we're going to have to do any more stress tests, and we're going to start doing our seminars again next month. And we're totally upgrading based on the newest, unbelievable research discoveries that have been coming down the pike in just the last 5 years. I don't have that in my book, so we're redoing it. Going to do it in our seminars starting next month.
Okay, gotcha. And do you have any past seminars available on Rethink Green, or any materials that they can get to kind of start educating themselves on cannabis?
All right, if you can keep a secret.
Okay.
If you and your listeners can keep a secret, if they go to brainschool101.com right now, I have all of my old information there at like $7 or $17.
Right.
When I upgrade it next month, is going to cost near $500.
Okay.
So if they want to get that information now, they can go to brainschool101.com.
Okay.
We're working on the upgrade to that, but it's not there yet. So they've got a tremendous opportunity to get the information, save a lot of money.
Sure.
Just going to that website now.
Okay, great.
Also, last year in 2024, because I started feeling so doggone good, I did a podcast like you're doing. I knew nothing about podcasts, so I started an audio podcast, called it Brain School for Seniors, and I did 50 episodes. And if they want to learn any cursory information, not in depth, but some really good information about how to make their brain work better, they can go to that podcast, which oh gosh, if I can remember the link, it's at tinyurl.com/Brain School Podcast, capital B, capital S, capital P. tinyurl.com/Brain School Podcast, and they can see any of the 50 episodes and they can pick one. And one of the things I tried to do was to make sure none of them were more than 30 minutes. They were little snippets.
Okay.
I call them brain bites.
Nice.
But they can go there as well until we have our new information out. But it's a real bargain right now, to be honest with you.
Well, I'll definitely make sure I put both of those links in the description for sure, Doug. And then that was, and then you've written a second book. Is that right?
Yes, I've got a new book called Do It Yourself Brain Surgery. It's
Okay.
101 strategies based on brain research that you can apply now to improve your life and the performance of your brain. I'm out of that right now. They've been selling really well,
Uh-huh.
and I got behind, and I just ordered another 1,000 copies, but they're not in yet. Now, if they want to, and you can post this, they can get a digital copy of that book now.
Uh-huh.
I've got a link to that. I don't know it by heart, but I have a link for that book. They can get the digital version now.
Okay.
FREE, free.
All right.
Yeah, I want to help as many people as I can, and I'll give you a couple. If you didn't have a question, I'll give you a couple tidbits that we learned from the brain science that
Sure.
things that just blew me away.
Right.
Everybody listening to this or watching this right now, guarantee if you're over 45, you've done this and you've worried about it, you can't remember a name of somebody you just met, even though you just met them and you're so darn mad that you couldn't remember their name. Or you walked into the pantry, or you walked into the kitchen, or you walked into the bedroom, and you get in there and you go, crap, why did I come in here? Well, that's one of the things the scientists have learned about. We've all got an area in the brain called the hippocampus. We got two of them, one on each side of the brain, one on the left brain, one on the right brain, and they're kind of horseshoe shaped. And on the end of each hippocampus is an organ called the amygdala. The amygdala is unbelievably powerful in our brain. But right now, I'm just talking about the hippocampus because the scientists have learned that the hippocampus, spelled exactly like that, that's where short-term memories are stored. If you learn something new, like somebody's name that you just met at a seminar or at a meeting or whatever, that goes into short-term memory in the hippocampus. Now, the amygdala, one of the major functions of the amygdala is to keep us safe. It controls what's called our reptilian brain, the non-conscious brain. I call it Nancy, NC, non-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy is so powerful, and the amygdala controls that and wants to keep us safe. So the amygdala, for example, we have, and you know this, and your listeners know this, we have something called the fight or flight syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
If you're faced with something frightening, you are either going to get prepared automatically. The amygdala controls that, releases the neurotransmitters, the hormones, the epinephrine to make your muscles stronger. That's the fight or flight syndrome. The amygdala controls that. Well, it's got to have enough energy to be able to do that if we're faced with an emergency. If you're driving down a residential street and a soccer ball comes rolling out into the street, bam, your foot goes from the gas to the brakes instantly. You do not have to think about it. It's automatic. Guess what part of your brain controls that? The amygdala.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes energy. So the amygdala, the creator made it this way, wants to conserve all the energy that it can. So if you just met somebody new, their name went into the hippocampus. But things stay in the hippocampus based on the amygdala's power, on average, only about 40 to 50 seconds.
Right. I've heard that.
If you don't take it from the hippocampus and send it to long-term memory, your amygdala is going to say, hey, this must not be important because they haven't sent it to long-term memory. Mm-hmm. One of the most important things people can learn is that memory is an active process, not passive. You've got to take action. Long-term memory is not automated. Short-term memory is, but long-term memory, you've got to take action to get it out of the hippocampus into long-term memory before your amygdala shuts it off. Right. Now, I call it the 43-second rule. If they learn nothing else from me rambling here, learn that memory's an active process. Stop beating yourself up if you can't remember names. Stop beating yourself up if you're worried about your memory and that you're getting dementia because you're old. No, you're not. You're normal.
Right.
Memory is an active process. This is so astounding, Tom. I'm sorry I get carried away because
No, I love it. I love it. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. The brain and the human body. I have a Facebook group called Mind, Body, and Soul Elevated. I want everyone to know what you know.
Oh, it's amazing. For example, the amygdala controls the hippocampus and short-term memory. It knows that you've got to send things from there to long-term memory, or it's going to shut them off to conserve energy for emergencies. And it knows that if it's firing in your hippocampus for 40 to 50 seconds and you haven't sent it to long-term memory, it's not important to you. But there are some things that the amygdala sends to long-term memory automatically. I'm going to get emotional again.
Feel free.
Our creator, Tom, is so amazing. But here, you're not old enough. You're only 60. But I can tell you, and probably some of your listeners can tell you exactly where they were, exactly what they were doing on November 22nd, 1963 at 12:37 p.m. Central Time.
I know what happened in Dallas.
In Dallas, Texas. And I was in college, because I'm old. I was walking up the steps to go to my accounting class. I had on a Madras shirt. I had on khaki pants. I had on my Bass Weegian penny loafers that I used to spit shine. And out of that class, I was an athlete at the time, living in the athletic dorm. And out of the classroom came running a friend of mine, Dick Stoddard, who was a lineman. He was humongous. And he was crying. This big monster of a man was crying. I said, Dickie, what's the matter? And he told me, the president's been shot. I'll never forget that moment. He said, all classes are canceled. I was in a fraternity at the time. I literally ran about 5 blocks to the fraternity house, and I walked in, and everybody was standing around watching the television. And they were at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas, all the reporters. And a very, very, very young Dan Rather said, the president is dead. I'll never forget that. Now, I don't, for 60 years plus, sit around trying to remember everything that I remembered from that day. No, the amygdala did that automatically.
Right.
And guess what? They have learned, and it's in my information. They can learn this. Everybody listening can learn this. You can train your amygdala to send things to your brain if you get in a highly charged emotional state when you're learning new things. And college students I teach now, get yourself, when you're studying for an exam, get yourself in a highly charged emotional state. And I in my books, in Revolutionize Your Brain, I talk about one of the ways you do that. For me, for example, when I walked my oldest daughter down the aisle, man, oh man, was that an emotionally charged event for me. And so if I want to get in a highly charged emotional state, I just sit down in an easy chair and close my eyes and start remembering my daughter's wedding day. And right now, I'm getting emotional right now. So, man, if there's something I want to learn new right now, I should go do it. Because the amygdala will send it straight to long-term memory. It's astounding.
Mm-hmm. And I remember you saying that. I just wanted to add, Doug, I remember you saying that before, and it stuck in my brain. So when I meet someone new for the first time, I'm immediately tuned in to transferring it to long-term. Hi, my name is Robin. Hey, Robin. Robin's one of my favorite birds. It's good to meet you, Robin. Or I'll put that key in my brain, or I'll say, if I say it 2 or 3 times, I've got it. But if I don't, then I'm not transferring it. And like you said, the 43-second rule, I got to tell you, I've told at least 100 people that exact thing that you just said, that don't worry you don't remember names. Nobody does. This is why. I didn't know the hippocampus amygdala answer. I didn't know that, but now I do.
Yeah, and you just, in my book, I talk about 2 ways that you can take care of that problem and solve it. And you just gave them both. 1, repetition. If you want something to go from your hippocampus to long-term memory, you got to repeat it. Now, if it's involved in a meeting where you met somebody new, you can't be standing there going, Robin, his name is Robin. You can't do that.
Right.
But you can do exactly what you just said. Well, it's great to meet you, Robin. where do you live, Robin? How many children do you have, Robin? You keep repeating their name in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that 10 or 12 times, bam, it's in
Oh,
long-term
yeah.
memory.
Nice.
And the second thing you can do, and you mentioned it too, you can relate what you're trying to send to long-term memory to something that's already in long-term memory.
Okay.
For example, you remember the Munsters?
Oh, yeah.
Little Eddie had a
Widow's
widow
Peak.
peak
Yeah.
to beat all widow peaks.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in a conference, a very important conference, and the guy I met, his name was Ed, and I knew I needed to remember that name. And Ed had a widow peak.
Okay.
So in my mind, I said, "Oh, look, he's got a widow peak right there." And I didn't point at
Right,
it, but I
right,
said, "Right there's a widow peak, like Eddie Munster,
Mm-hmm.
Eddie." So his name is Ed. I
Right.
use it again. I met a second guy at that seminar. His name was Noel, Noel, and he had white hair. He looked like me, and a
Mm-hmm.
white hair and a white beard. So I related him to Santa Claus, white, Noel, Christmas, Noel. Boom.
Right.
Did not forget his name.
Right.
Now you can cheat on that. Years ago, before I knew anything about how the brain works, in fact, my mom's best friend, who was the first Supreme Court justice in Ohio that was a woman,
Really?
a brilliant woman. She told me, Doug, when you're a judge, get a black box on your desk. And when these lawyers come in and schmooze, which they all do, if they got a case in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
write something down on an index card about them and put it in a box alphabetically. So when they come back for another case, it won't be here, it'll be in that black box.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? No, that was a CRM for your brain before
Right.
we had CRMs.
There you go. Yes.
And you know
Yes.
what happened? Absolutely true case. A lawyer came in. He started schmoozing to me. He had a case in front of me later. He started schmoozing. He was sunburned. I said, "Man, you've been out in the sun." He said, "Yeah, we went to Lake Cumberland in Kentucky. Beautiful lake." Well, I love Lake Cumberland. I'd been there many times myself. I said, "Man, you must have had a great weekend." He said, "Well, actually, it was bad." "What do you mean?" "Well, my son had a jet ski accident and broke his leg. They're not sure he's ever going to walk again. They're going to require several surgeries." Well, it was my bailiff came in and said, "Judge, it's time to go into the court." So I said, "In a minute." I pulled out a blank card. I wrote his name on it. I wrote that incident at Lake Cumberland on the card, put it back in the box. 9 to 11 months later, he came in with another case. I saw him on the docket. Before he came in to schmooze, I pulled his card out, recalling that event where his son was horribly injured. So he comes in, shakes his hand, or I shake his hand. I said, "David, how's your son's leg? Did the surgery work? Is he able to walk?" And he kind of went back like that, like, how did he remember that? Because I had in my head that memory was an active process, not passive. And I had that CRM. Now, that wasn't through the hippocampus, that was through a brilliant woman who also was a member of Mensa.
Right.
And you know what? That lawyer, it was like 3 years later, referred a case to me because his law firm, which is her huge law firm, had a conflict of interest. He referred the case to me, and I made over $1 million fee on that case because he thought I was smart
Mm-hmm. You are.
in remembering.
But it's smart
So,
that you use tools to make
yes.
your life better and your achievements greater.
Yeah. 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 It's the human brain is amazing. We could spend probably 6 hours talking about the things that the scientists have learned. There's an institute out in La Jolla, California, San Diego area, called the Jonas Salk, SALK Institute
Mm-hmm.
of Biological Studies, named after Jonas Salk, the
Sure.
inventor, creator of the Salk polio vaccine back in the 50s. But that institute has about 20 of the top neuroscientists in the world doing research there.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to be a doctor to get into this symposium they have every January. And I have a doctorate degree, doctor of law degree. So I was allowed in. Every January, I went to this symposium where these scientists would report their papers or what research they were doing. They would report it to all these neuroscientists. And I was sitting in the back, and I had, and this is one of the things we teach people to do, I had my digital voice recorder, my own personal amygdala.
Right.
So that if I don't have time to repeat their name, if I don't have time to relate it to something in long-term memory, I put it on here. Whenever I have an idea, I put it on here, never to lose it. Anyway.
And you still do that?
Oh, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah. This is my newest version. Yeah.
Definitely want to do some more of that. Doug, I am absolutely fascinated by you as a person. One of the things that I love about you as a human being is that you have such this gentle spirit about you, and you are intelligent and you're learned, and you continue to feed your 80-year-old mind. And what I wanted to say to you for advice for anybody from, say, 40 to 80, what are a couple of takeaways that we could say, hey, what can I do for my memory tomorrow? Or one thing to make myself maybe stay dialed in? What are a couple tips you can leave us with before we go?
All right. I have to give you the greatest brain research discovery of all. It's called neurogenesis. Neuro, neuron, brain cell, genesis, birth. Neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells. Everybody over the age of 45 worries about dementia, worries about Alzheimer's disease, which leads to dementia. We all do. Well, one of the things that the scientists have learned is neurogenesis, and it is a phenomenal discovery that says if you stimulate your brain, no matter what your age, your brain will form new DSP connections, increasing the total number of connections in your neurons, which will increase your total capacity for future achievements. Are you kidding me? We don't have to worry about getting old. We can create brand new connections in our brain. You and I, right this second, are creating new connections in our brain because you and I have never done this before.
Right.
The way you, let me go through it step by step real quick.
Sure.
If you stimulate your brain, what does that mean? Do you have to put electrodes in and take your hands away and yell clear? No. Stimulating your brain simply means learning something new, which will form new connections. DSP stands for dendrite spine protuberances. Literally, they can now see, I've seen the video of the neurotransmitters being formed. What I saw happen was these new connections were being created when the person was learning or trying to learn Greek for the very first time. And they showed, literally, remember, they can see a living human brain now. And they were forming new connections as they were trying to learn Greek. So what you and I can do, and all the listeners can do to help ward off Alzheimer's and dementia, is do and learn new things.
Gotcha.
You drive to work the same way every day. Stop it.
Right.
Come home from work a different way than you went to work, and a different way tomorrow than you used today.
Right. I started brushing my teeth with my left hand.
There you go. That was number 2. You beat me to it.
Uh-oh. Go ahead.
I'm left-handed.
Okay. I'm right-handed.
Just this morning, I brushed my teeth with my right hand.
I did my left.
Do things differently. Learn new things. Study new things. Travel. Travel is one of the best ways to form new connections in your brain. Card games. Literally, people that have a bridge club will live longer. They will fight off when you every month, maybe 20 days out of 30, learn something new. And it's not hard to do. You can play a card game. You can play solitaire. Every game of solitaire is different than the last one you played. Sudoku puzzles. I fill books of Sudoku puzzles. And you can do that. I forget where I was going with that. See, it was in my hippocampus.
There you go.
No,
just other tips. Any other tips on the memory part of things? But you've covered a lot. We've covered a lot in this time. Whatever else you want to share before we land the plane, let me know.
2 quick things. Exercise, physical exercise, 5 days a week, at least 50. I lost you on the screen, but I know what you look like. So okay. It's okay.
I see you. Everything's fine. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
exercise maybe 15 minutes a day, and it doesn't have to be really strenuous exercise. Any form of exercise will reduce your risk of dementia and Alzheimer's and make your brain work better. Very powerful. The other thing I would strongly recommend is vitamin D. Take a vitamin D supplement where you get at least 5,000 units a day.
Okay.
I take 10,000 a day of vitamin D. So physical exercise, learn new things, vitamin D.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I just wanted to let everyone know all the information to learn about medical cannabis. The rethinkgreen.org is the website. You can reach Doug at doug@brainapples.com. We're going to have information on his books and everything that we've covered today down below in the description. Please make sure you like the video and share it with your friends. We greatly appreciate it. That's wonderful and beneficial for the channel. Doug, I just want to tell you, number one, it's absolutely wonderful to see you. I'm so glad that you didn't listen to the doctors and you listened to the doctors, but you also found your own way. So thank God, Thank God you're here.
Yep, thank God. And the angel he sent, her name is Jan.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Doug. And everyone have a great day.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.